have a record button.
Welcome, everybody. We are recording Bible study for the Sermon on the Mount. So, ready or not, here we come. How is everybody?
Right.
Good.
Great. So, Kathy, we
Good.
missed you. We missed you last week. Are you okay?
Yeah, I was in Casper.
Oh, how's your mom?
She's doing okay, thank you.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. We have a long history with the Sermon on the Mount. So I am going to skip to this reflection question, see if anybody can answer this reflection question. When were you introduced to the Sermon on the Mount or the Beatitudes? Does anybody have any memory of that?
I remember it being very meaningful and very significant, but I sure couldn't tell you the first time that I read them, saw them, or heard them preached about. It probably would have been in Araba back in the late 1950s.
The late 1950s? Did it seem like it was important to the church of the brethren at that point?
Yes, the church was very brethren-y at that point.
Right.
That's a term I made up, obviously.
Brethren-y. Yeah, that's a good term. So anybody else have any recollections?
I'm sure it was either Sunday school or vacation Bible school.
Yeah, you were pretty young.
Yes, and I'm sure that we may have even been asked to memorize the Beatitudes.
Oh, wow. That's pretty daunting task, I think. Can you say them now by memory?
Nope.
No. Anybody who wasn't raised in the Brethren tradition, any thoughts about hearing about the Beatitudes? Blessed are you, blessed are the poor in spirit, etc. Any memories of hearing those words before?
I don't know if we had them in catechism. I want to say we did, but I know, like going to Catholic school, we also had religion as a class, and I know for sure we talked about it in there, but I want to say we also studied it in catechism when you're getting ready for like your confirmation or something. But I wouldn't quote myself on that, but I think it may have been then too.
Aha. So where do you find the I gotta change this. Where do you find the Sermon on the Mount? I had to get the cheats out of the way there.
In the Bible.
In the Bible.
Matthew 5, 6, and 7.
Right. So I remember being at church camp and somebody from my local church came and told us about the Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7 would have all the guidelines that you would need to help you through life. And I thought, yeah, right. And then I started to look at them and go, this is pretty good stuff. So I was probably only 10 or 11, I think, when that was church camp was for all ages. And I think we could go as young as 10 or 12 or something. So someone in my local church thought this was a pretty important passage. And I guess that made an impression on me. So anybody hear sermons out of this? Anybody, raise your hand if you've ever heard a sermon on the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah. Now, anybody, oops, I got to go to the other screen. I can't see everybody. Raise your hand again, another sec. Okay. So Sermon on the Plain. Anybody heard of Sermon on the Plain?
I don't know what it is, but yeah. What happened to the middle?
Okay, so what's the Sermon on the Plain, you smart seminary folk?
Dave, you tell somebody else.
Well, my understanding was that there are kind of two different takes on it. One is that it was a flat spot on the mountain, and the other one, was just more traditional.
So yeah, they have it two different gospels. One is in Luke, Sermon on the Plain. One is in Matthew, Sermon on the Mount, and they're slightly different versions. I guess we can get into that a little bit later. But Dave's gonna. He told me he had his 2 cents about Sermon on the Plain. So do you want to? I guess we'll wait for your 2 cents in a little bit, Dave, if that's okay. So
Or pennies worth, whatever.
penny's worth. Okay. So back to how have people looked at this scripture? Is it important or not? So Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anybody heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer? Okay, this is a guy who didn't grow up in a Christian household, but he studied religion in Germany, and he decided that during the Hitler years that the church was terribly wrong in following Hitler's path, and so he resisted and started a movement where he had other seminary folk living and trying to be followers, radical disciples of Jesus, and criticizing Hitler. And can you imagine what happened to him? Anybody got a guess? Yeah, he was a few days before the end of the war. The order came for him to be executed. So just days away from being freed by the Allied forces, he was killed for his beliefs. So he wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship, and this led him to teaching about pacifism and public opposition to Adolf Hitler. Before that, he was pretty much going along with the German religion of the time that said, yeah, you can follow the government. That's the thing you should do. You should be a faithful, good citizen. And then Hitler came along, and that was pretty hard to swallow. Bonhoeffer rebuffed the popular view that the Sermon on the Mount are mere ideals that we can only strive for someday, by and by. But he said the Sermon on the Mount is a tool for living obedience and guidance in the church struggle. This book I was reading comes out of Glenn Stassen, who was writing about Bonhoeffer and the Sermon on the Mount and how important it is. Someone want to read this section here, Stassen, that little quote?
I'll read it.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Stassen also states, in the New Testament and the first 2 centuries of the church, the Sermon on the Mount was the most quoted and cited of Jesus' teachings. It is the largest block of Jesus' teachings in the New Testament.
So if we want to know what Jesus thought and what Jesus was teaching, we turn to those sections. What does Jesus say about homosexuality, by the way?
About that much.
Yeah, it's nothing in the Sermon on the Mount, nothing in the New Testament. So all the other scriptures that we have are from a different part of the scripture. Hey, welcome, Howard.
Thank you.
Welcome, Howard and Jan. So we just finished this quote about the Sermon on the Mount is the most quoted and cited of Jesus' teachings in the first 2 centuries. How do they know that anyway, Lyle? Or how do they know that was the most quoted?
Well, I don't know, but I know that for Brethren, it's certainly one of our mainstays, but it's probably the one from Matthew is probably most familiar with most people.
Right, it's the more familiar version. So the Church of the Brethren has been saying what Stassen stated for, about what Bonhoeffer stated, that this is not for something pie in the sky to live for someday by and by, but it's for right here, today, now, to live your life. And so the Church of the Brethren has been saying that for over 300 years. Bonhoeffer's a newbie. He just came on in 19
30s.
30s, and when was his death? 40s, I guess.
When
And
was he killed? Bonhoeffer.
he was studying this in 1931-32, and
Well, he signed the Declaration of Barmen in 1933, which kicked the whole thing off. Karl Barth wrote it. He signed it along, I think, 125 clergy and theologians signed it in Germany.
right.
They
So,
all lost their job.
oh boy, don't have any ideas about me signing any papers, Lyle. So the Church of the Brethren has been saying that this is the path that is the most radical version of discipleship if we want to be followers of Jesus. So then I'm reading a Catholic priest, a person that Lyle and Dave and I saw at annual conference. He's a Catholic priest out of Arizona, and his idea is that peace and nonviolence is what Jesus was trying to teach us. And in fact, he's been banned from the whole state of Iowa, not allowed to go there and lecture anymore because his ideas were about peacemaking were so disturbing to the bishops in Iowa that they don't want him to come back anymore. So somebody want to read what John Deere says that starts with Gandhi? Read that quote for us.
I will.
Thanks.
Gandhi read the Sermon on the Mount every morning and every evening for over 40 years. He claimed the Sermon on the Mount held the greatest teachings on nonviolence in human literature. And since he wanted to be a person of nonviolence, he had to read from it regularly as a how-to guide book. After I learned this, I started to read the Sermon on the Mount more frequently and to teach it from the nonviolent life.
Right. So the section that we're looking at starts with the Beatitudes, and Beatitudes are blessed are the, what is Beatitude? Is that mean blessed? Is that the interpretation? Is that an Old English word, or what is that? Dave's looking it up. So the Beatitudes are blessed are the, so we're looking at this first one, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So there's a lot of topics in Sermon on the Mount, and we will try to do them in sections, but the first one is blessings. So how many of you have ever received a blessing?
Every day.
Yeah. And there's formal ones and informal ones. I think the Catholic Church is good on formal ones, right? Are there formal blessings for Catholics? Like at your wedding, is that a formal blessing that you would be given a blessing by the priest? Or do you get blessed at communion, Dave? You were an altar boy.
Yeah, blessings happen a lot, during a service, during Mass and other kinds of confirmation. Yeah, happens quite frequently.
So we would do a blessing formally at a child dedication or something like that. And informally, every benediction is sort of a blessing for you as you leave the church and go out for your week and into the world. I've got a great joke. I guess I'm going to have to tell it. So there was this man, he went to his his Catholic, let's see if I can get this right. He went to his Catholic priest and he said, Father, can you bless my new Ferrari? I bought this new car and I'd like for you to bless it. And he goes, oh, blessings, they're such a great thing, but we can't bless Ferraris. We don't have a blessing for that. So he goes to the United Methodist Church and he goes, Reverend, can you bless my new Ferrari? I've got this great Ferrari and I just want somebody to bless it. And he goes, Methodist Church, oh, we have some really great blessings. We have blessings for babies and weddings and all kinds of occasions. But for Ferraris, I don't think we have a blessing for that. So then he goes to a Church of the Brethren. This is loosely translated. He goes to a Church of the Brethren minister and he goes, Pastor, can you bless my Ferrari? I bought this new car and I really would like to have a blessing. And the minister goes, Ferraris, what a great car. They're really fast and they're really smooth riding and it's a wonderful car. But what's a blessing?
Oh, oh my.
So anyway,
Not be talking.
we have blessings for all kinds of things. I don't know if we have blessings for cars or not, but we certainly can think about people want to have blessings in their life. So, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So what does that mean? It's always hard to figure out what is Jesus trying to say here. And I'm really glad someone asked Billy Graham because I thought this was pretty good. Someone want to read that quote for us? Start with someone once asked Billy.
I have a slightly different translation in my newest Bible that I think is interesting.
Okay.
And it says, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. It's just a
Ooh.
slightly different twist. And that's
God
life
blesses those who are
application.
poor.
New Living Translation, Life Application Study Bible.
Okay. That puts a different twist. God blesses those who are poor because they knows that they need it. Is that what it said?
Yes, and realize their need for him.
Aha.
God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs.
And maybe we have some more translations. Who else has any? Matthew chapter 5. Anybody else with another one?
Gail, I have the Message.
Okay.
You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. Sorry.
Aha.
Hmm.
So that's, say that again, Larry. Blessed are you.
When you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule.
So blessed are the poor in spirit. I wonder if we could say, if that would be translated, blessed are you who are poor in ego, and there's less of you and more of God. I've never seen that translation. I just going to make that a blasphemy, but
That's an interesting translation, though. I kind of like it because I think there's a lot of truth in that. Sometimes we don't recognize God or the divine unless we are at the end of our.
oops. I froze, Dave.
I kind of like it. I think that's kind of a cool translation.
Right.
Well, your Billy Graham quote didn't do too shabby either. I mean, he says, what did he mean? Simply this: we must be humble in our spirits. If you put the word humble in the place of poor, you will understand what he meant. In other words, when we come to God, we must realize our own sin and our spiritual emptiness and poverty. We must not be self-satisfied or proud in our hearts, thinking we don't really need God. If we are, God cannot bless us. The Bible says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. From James.
Right.
So whether it's ego or anything else that gets in the way, it's whatever gets in the way of your spirit flourishing in God, or allowing God's spirit to flourish in you. So, which is a little bit contradictory to poor in spirit. It's how do you think about spirit too? So, and is it just poverty poor, or is it spirit poor?
End of your rope poor or poverty poor? Yeah. It's not an easy one for me to understand every time I read it.
Some of it may depend on how you define the poor, the rope, end of the rope. What rope are you talking about? Are you talking about financial poverty, spiritual poverty,
Yeah.
Lack of friends, lack of whatever?
Right. So anybody else have a teaching that they remember? Does anybody recall someone explaining this to you before? I can quote it.
Well, and you've preached on it. Folks have preached on it, but I think it really does baffle people, because poor in spirit is like, what? That doesn't make sense. You want to be rich in spirit. It's how do we understand? How do we understand these words and meanings in our day and time? And I don't know that it aligns. I want to toss out one more thing while I think about it, is that you were talking about translations, and I don't know which one it is. I think it's whatever the Pew Bible is. And it says happy. Happy are the, rather than the blessed. And the happy just annoys the heck out of me. I don't know how that works, but it just annoys me.
Yeah. Well, somewhere on the internet this week, I read the translation that if you are, it's kind of what Billy Graham said, if you're so already full in of knowing it all, then how can you possibly be blessed? Because you're already stuffed with all the stuff that makes you feel like you've got it made. And so if you can't take that stuff out, like I have to take out my pride and my ego and my accomplishments, and get down to the poor in spirit, or I'm not going to make it very far in the kingdom of heaven.
Dale Brown once talked with me, and he said, we were talking about the New Testament, and he said the liberals don't think the New Testament's worth reading. The evangelicals think they know it all. It's for those of us who don't know it all to do serious Bible study. And I think that may be the meaning in here, although we have to be very careful not to start reading in or even going with other people's, what they've read into the scripture.
So we're studying it for ourselves to get the Spirit to guide us.
If you don't know it all, you're able to learn and to inherit the kingdom.
Right.
Jesus pointed to a bunch of grubby, unbaptized Jewish children and said, of such is the kingdom of God.
Right.
Well, I think it was your third option, that you need to study. In other words, it forces you to go and look, it raises the question. And which to me, part of that is context, right? So Gail, her comment about Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, right? So I mean, and where that comes from, if you look at Luke chapter 6, which is the parallel text of the Beatitudes, it does say that he comes down from a mountain to a plain. And if you go to Israel, it's right by the Sea of Galilee. I mean, in terms of the traditional place of it, you know, there's a church there, built there, and all that. But you know, the lake, and there's a hill, and you come down, and you know, people say things. Well, a plain would be a better place to have a lot of people. The thing that helped me the most, and I don't know where I read this or heard this, was this was probably one of Jesus's stump speeches. You know, I mean, it's not like he taught this one time, but this is like a cornerstone, something he would have taught a lot. And that made a lot of sense to me, you know. And then, you know, the gospel writers are writing several decades after Jesus's life, and they do some things contextually in terms of what is most important to them and their memory of it. So yeah, there's something else, but I can wait on that. See if anybody has a comment.
Somebody must have thought it was important because they kept it fresh in their memory so that it could be written down 70 or 80 or 90 years later. So my memory's not that good. Blessed are the what did he say?
Well, for just to observe about your stump speech, what was it? The Jesus Seminar, Marcus Borg, folks who went through and really studied the Bible and with scissors and said, Jesus said this, somebody else said this. Jesus said these words, somebody else said these words. And so it was a kind of sorting for what can we really validate that Jesus really most likely said, and that this was one that just about everybody agreed on. We really do think Jesus really did say these words, as opposed to Gail's comment about, you know, somebody else is writing it or somebody else's memory or. So that's just more intellectual observation about it.
So it obviously made an impact on the people who heard it. I mean, that's the main point, is that they carried it with them and memorized it or remembered it for all these years. And we seem to still remember it. Beatitudes are still, we can say some of them at least.
Well, it's not directly related to the Jesus Seminar, which, you know, is controversial, which is based on historical and literary analysis, that sort of thing. But for a long, you know, I mean, it goes way back that we have 4 gospels, right? So what's going on? Why are there 4 different accounts? And one way that persons look at Matthew particularly is that they call them the 5 discourses. In other words, you can divide Matthew up into 5 sections based on how it's written. You know, when you look at something, it would be like, you know, a play that would have, you know, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3 kind of thing. And that those 5 discourses, so the reason that he comes from a mountain is that, you know, Jesus is the new Moses. And so he's coming down the mountain, and there's 5 books to the first 5 books of the Bible that Moses traditionally wrote. So in other words, it's a literary kind of connection. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons why people kind of say, yeah, that makes some sense. So Matthew's trying to present Jesus as a new Moses, so to speak.
So this would almost be like the 10 Commandments. You know, it'd be that important in Matthew's gospel. So did you have another 2 cents about the Jesus, the Sermon on the Plains or Sermon on the Mount? Was that your other 2 cents?
Well, just, if you look at Luke chapter 6, whether now or later, Luke adds commentary to some of the Beatitudes. And so Luke chapter 6, he actually quotes, "Woe to you who are rich, you have your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, you will be hungry. If you're laughing now, you will mourn and weep." In other words, so Luke expands on some of the Beatitudes.
Verse 24 and 25.
Yeah, verses 24, 25. And it's not in, and it's not, he doesn't expand it. I mean, blessed are you who are poor rather than poor in spirit. But then later on, he has almost some definitions about that. And you don't see that to the same degree in Matthew. So the thinking is Luke is interpreting this, or he's shaping his gospel. That's a better way to think of it, around some of the concerns that he thinks are most important.
So poor, we're not sure what Luke means by poor. I don't know what the Greek word would be, but it might be the physically poor or the economically poor.
Some have interpreted it that way. The word is the same in Greek. I did look that up. But, Matthew adds in the spirit, or pneumatai, pneumatic, the wind. I mean, that's the word for spirit in Greek. So that's what the Luke or the Matthew version has. So these, and the thing is, these are all observations of what's in the text. Then the question is what does it mean?
So
Which is what we get to wrestle with.
What does it mean for our life? We claim to be disciples of Jesus, so now what?
So how do you see poor in spirit relating to such things as pride?
As such things as what?
As pride.
Definitely a connection. What I would think about is, okay, so where else in the Bible and in the New Testament and in Jesus' teaching does he talk about the poor? In other words, to allow that to shape my understanding of what it might mean in this passage. And I think it would probably be multifaceted. I haven't done that specifically, but Jesus talks about the inner life and the outer life, right? And both are important. Although if you aren't doing the outer things, he's not real interested in the inner things, seems to me. You got to have, both of them are important.
Well, it seems what it does for me when I think about it, if I'm personally gonna make sense out of it, thinking of it in a more contemplative, spiritual kind of way is really the only way I can get at it. And so the being humble, being empty, Gail mentioned ego. So it's this sense of, it's not about me, it's all about God. And so I have to set myself aside. The nothingness kind of concept of finding, making space for God. So rather than having me fill up the space with my thinking, ego, pride, whatever. So that's how I play with it. So I don't know that necessarily answers what you were asking, Fred, but.
Yeah, well, and I've wondered, my mother always used to tell me, when I would get real excited about thinking I'd been pretty great at something, she would say, "Sonny boy, pride always comes before a fall." Mm-hmm. And it always took the wind out of my excitement, And so I wondered how this kind of related to that. And then the other question that I have about it is it a futuristic or is it a current thing? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Is that a current, or is that a will be?
That would be a translation question. That's a good question. And
Or it's what you started out with. You know, the brethren have always lived with this. It's what Bonhoeffer was saying. This is now. You know, and I missed the discussion about the kingdom of heaven in the Lord's Prayer and, you know, where you went with that. But, you know, if you want to dismiss this, then you say it's all in the future. If you want to embrace it, you say it's all now. The kingdom of heaven is now. It's what, you know, how we bring life to it, and how we bring the spirit, not so much in this sense. I always remember hearing the phrase of don't be so full of yourself when you get your childhood recollection.
and the kingdom of heaven, we said, is kind of like an overlap and an intertwined with the earth here now. So it's not far away. It's the kingdom of heaven has come near. So it's right here at hand. Touch it, feel it, see it, smell it. I think that kind of kingdom of heaven. And then yours is the kingdom of heaven. And if you're not poor in spirit, maybe you don't know that the kingdom of heaven is yours. You don't get it. You don't see it. I mean, I think we can be very blind to what the blessings are that we're receiving if we don't see them. Like Larry said, we have blessings every day. How many people woke up this morning saying, "Oh my gosh, I have just been blessed. What a blessing I have." I mean, that's a way of looking at everyday morning, right?
I recall that there were certain Nigerian men who would greet me or us by saying baraka, and that means blessings.
Uh-huh.
That's the way they would greet you. Well, blessings to you.
Every day, every time.
Yes.
And blessings in a coronavirus. Have we been able to see any?
Say that again.
Blessings during a coronavirus. Have we been able to see any blessings in a coronavirus time?
I think there are things we can pull out of it. You know, I've noticed the inability to be intimate with people. You know, you can't hug, you can't put your hands on, you can't be close with. I think the virus, and the other thing I think the virus has taught me is I was really, really busy with all sorts of things. And then when all of that died, it was like, what part of that was important and what part of it wasn't? And so to me, the virus has been quite a learning experience up to this point. And I'm still not sure what to do with it.
Right.
You know, I mean, just the fact that we are doing Bible study like this, I wouldn't be talking to Fred. I wouldn't be in a Bible study with Fred or Larry or Donna. I mean, you know, we were not having Bible study once a week. Now we have Bible study. Now we are missing our Sunday school on Sunday mornings, but you know, I think there's lots of blessings coming out of COVID, and a lot of it has to do with how things have gotten deconstructed, and then how creative we have had to be to reconstruct. So I think there's just lots of good things, particularly for institutions like the church, like education, like you know. So it's shaken up the world in, we don't have to be out running around every 5 minutes of the day. We are all slowed down. And so I think slowing down is a really powerful message. Doesn't mean people take advantage of it or see it or use it or understand it. But I think a lot of people truly are. So it's becoming, for yourself, more creative, more refocused, more, businesses have gone away, but new businesses have evolved, or new ways of doing business have evolved. Yeah.
Yeah, I think well said. So I was going to pick on Howard and Jan. They're walking away, so I guess I can't pick on them. Yeah, and Celia has been home, working from home. Your life has changed.
Yes, I mean, the coronavirus, for all its drawbacks, it is true that there are like some huge blessings. While Vicky was talking, one of the things I was thinking about, I think that's a really great blessing, is the fact that there are not as many cars out on the road, and we have seen a real significant change in the climate because of that, with our carbon footprint not being as, and I mean, that is not just like a personal blessing, that's like a universal blessing. Everybody benefits from that. And so, for me, that is probably the greatest blessing of the coronavirus.
Wonder if anybody's doing any studies on what it's meant to family units, because I would think that families cannot be as involved with others and are forced to be together more. And I know if you've got a dysfunctional family, that's not good. But if you had a healthy family, that might strengthen and pull that together. And I wonder if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I don't know of any like official studies, but it's kind of funny that you mentioned this, because I was talking to this associate of mine who prides himself on being something of an expert on the Bible and all things God related, and he is very, very much against any sort of separation, any sort of um, sheltering in place. His view is that um, from the before you were born, God knew when you were going to die. So he thinks like all the stuff that we're doing is like a complete waste of time, because if it's your time to go, whether it's from coronavirus or not, you're gonna go. But he didn't have any like research to back this up. But his other point is that since we've been sheltering in place, there have been more divorces, and people and families are just not getting along. And so I said, well, that's kind of sad, because that means that there was something wrong um, with the relationship if it cannot withstand a few months of spending more time together. That just means that something was wrong anyway. And he thinks, no, he thinks that it's because the world is sort of imposing its laws onto these people, on people, on how to live, that we are forcing them into these situations. He's kind of a little off, as I said, to me. But yeah, it's just interesting that you mentioned about how people are getting along, because he seems to feel that it's actually breaking down families, not helping to build them up.
So the technical term for our days are numbered and God's going to know when we live or die, that's fatalism. And it's really big in the Muslim world, right, Larry and Donna?
Yes.
Oh, Vicky.
Well, I have a comment back to playing off of Celia's friend. So this is little commercial here. October is Conflict Resolution Month. Okay, so Um, every October, they pick a book and a video. And the book that they picked, coincidentally, and there's a study guide, and actually there is a conversation about it at the Denver Public Library right after this at 6:30. The book is called, oh, wait, I keep forgetting because I haven't been a part of it. It's called, come on. We Need to Talk, which really, I mean, you get forced together as a family. And like you say, there's something that's a hitch in there and it slows everything down. And this is the opportunity to practice a little bit of humble spirit and be a better listener and work hard at trying to talk things through and problem solve without blame and be curious with the other and their viewpoint, and on and on and on. So it's, the book is by Celeste Headlee, Headlee, and I recommend you reading it. So I haven't yet, but it's, you know, this is the real stuff of our days, of how we get along and how we live and love each other, and practice all these parts of being blessed are we.
So not for pie in the sky some by and by day, but maybe today in coronavirus we can learn.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so Kathy, your life has been interrupted a lot with working every day, but anything that you're seeing is a blessing for you?
Well, in reality, I do the same or more work than as I did before. I'm just in a different location, and our whole company did that very quickly. I mean, I think I'm blessed that I'm working. I think everyone should be blessed if they don't have immediate family member that's been sick with this. But with what Vicki was just saying, it's like, well, that's how you should treat everyone every day, not just because it's this pandemic. So all the listing that Vicki was doing, is I'm thinking, it's like, well, you have your work family and you have your home family. And sometimes when I hear this disruption, it's like, you treat your home family with less respect than you do your work family because you have a different comfort level with them. And that's where I was just going with what she was saying in regards to that. It just made me wonder, because I have people that work for me where now, I don't know how they do it. They have 2 kids, both husband and wife, and they work out of their bedroom all day. I mean, that's like 24/7 today. And yet they are still really good friends. So I think it sort of depends on the people and their relationship.
Right. And if this is a Bonhoeffer said that, or no, I guess it was Gandhi said this is a how-to guidebook, how to live as in community. So his Gandhi was writing this book on, or Bonhoeffer's writing this book on life together, or how to be the cost of discipleship, how to be a disciple. And one of the things is you have to treat people with these blessings that you are wanting for this for yourself. You have to treat people with the same blessings as well. So blessings in the Corona times. Howard and Jan, you have less running around to do, or less traffic, or I'm wondering, what are the blessings that you're seeing?
We just had an interruption here a few minutes ago. A bird hit the window and went down on the deck, and it's probably got a broken leg, and Jan has it here. She's trying to see if she can bring it back to where it can go, but she's thinking that it's got a broken leg and probably won't be able to. I don't know. We'll put it back out after a while, but it was just laying on its side out here to begin with. And
oh yeah, so
but it seems to have perked up and its eyes are blinking. So, it's hard to know what you got.
It had
So that was our interruption. Sorry about that.
no problem. You had a concussion, a bird concussion, sounds like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, windows are not a blessing necessarily if you're a bird.
Not at all.
No.
The eye is blinking, but I don't believe we have enough intactness here to survive.
Yeah, it's pretty much a vicious world out there if you're a wounded animal, isn't it? Well, I've appreciated your trips down to the church, and I don't know that you would have to stay safe, but if it weren't for COVID, you might not have been staying at home as much, I'm guessing. Is that true, Howard and Jan?
Yeah, we
move around.
We move around a fair amount, seems like, and people talk about slowing down. It doesn't feel like I don't feel like we've really slowed down much. And we use the mask and all of that, and like we just have a young friend just now who's actually it was a classmate of Lori's who is moving, bought herself a condo and so forth. And by the way, has a divan to get rid of. We have to go pick up sometime this week to, just to help her out. And, we need to find a home for this Davenport. So if anybody knows of somebody needs one, why let us know. We're going to be picking it up.
Oh boy.
So, I don't know. It's just interesting. And we've been, seems like we've been treading water in many ways.
Uh-oh.
Oops. So discipleship keeps you busy, sounds like. Oh boy.
When Celia, your story, I mean, whenever I hear a phrase like number our days, God has numbered our days, then I'm always like, I've just done a quick search. And what I find is that it comes, one place is Psalm 90, teach us to number our days that we apply our hearts unto wisdom. So in other words, it's having awareness of who God is and who we are. Wisdom is all about having a good life. And that good life is not just about being happy. And maybe the translation of those Beatitudes and using happy as the person, a couple of you mentioned, that may not, happiness, we kind of think about in terms of me in our culture, I think generally. And the kingdom of God is not necessarily about happiness in that sense. It's more about wholeness and wellness, for me and for others. So even to take it back to, is it about blessed are the poor or the poor in spirit? Which one? Both. I mean, I think there's more there than just trying to parse out, it's got to, Luke is better or Matthew is better, or is more accurate to what Jesus was trying to teach, because that's what wisdom is about.
And I think it's trying to say that your life is guided by something bigger than just your own passions or your own desires, and so blessed are you. This is going to be maybe long-term kind of, not short-term happiness, but long-term happiness could be the result. So Bible study, blessed are you for doing Bible study. Whoever thought that would be a blessing.
Blessings on you for leading it, Gail.
Thank you. Even when we are stumbling our way through together, we can still, that's kind of what we're called to do. So the other thing is that the scriptures are not going to be apparent maybe to everyone all the time. Every single passage might not be clear, but when I gather you together, I learn a whole lot more about blessed are the spirit. And what might I do differently this week? Well, maybe I will get up and think about, I am blessed today. If I wake up in the morning and think about, and my spirit can be blessed. So with that, I think we're getting close. Anybody have a final comment?
I was, when we started, I had this thought, what is the difference between being blessed like this and gratitude? I mean, there's a blessing that comes from afar that somebody is giving to me. Gratitude is me expressing. Anyway, it was just a thought.
I would think blessing is something that's done. You're not the one doing it, you're the one receiving it, like you said.
Yeah.
And gratitude is certainly a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I could receive all the blessings in the world and never be grateful for even one single one of them, which is the sad thing about what I worry about the world.
Yeah. Well, it probably is the truth of the whole thing. We do have all these blessings, but we are either ignoring them, not paying attention, or not attempting to live into them.
I have a quick story. When I was working as a pastor in rural Kansas, I was a new mother, and I was talking to all the women in the church, going, "Well, how did you do it? How did you raise your kids when, it was I'm finding this kind of difficult. I've got this little baby, and there's never any time to sit down or anything." And so Evelyn Stillwagon said to me, "Well, it sure got easier once we got running water." So that put a real stopper on any of my complaining. Okay, I think I have a lot of blessings I didn't realize I had. So with that, let's all be grateful for running water today and for other blessings that might be invisible to us. All right. Take care.
Blessings.
Blessings.
Amen.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All
And we
right.
just had a call come in now from Stan Nossinger. He's out of surgery. He get his staples out tomorrow. He had
Oh.
back surgery.
Oh, good.
And going to have Sam tomorrow. So yeah.
Okay, we're just finishing up.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good.